This episode of Boing Boing TV is brought to you by Verizon.
I'm Shini Jardin from Boing Boing TV. Cindy Cohn from the Electronic Frontier Foundation is here with me, and Mark Klein, who is probably best known as the AT&T whistleblower, who is here tonight to receive an award from the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
The outside panel that awards EFF's Pioneer Award has chosen Mark Klein as an EFF pioneer.
And we're here at the O'Reilly Emerging Technology Conference, ETech as it's commonly known. But this really is a story of one person's conviction to truth and to ethics and to making sure that the right story got out to people. This is something that really has impacted the country in a huge way.
Tremendously. I mean, we've lost track of the number of times that the president has mentioned Mr. Klein's evidence and the lawsuit that we filed as a result of it. It's an issue that I think is really it's really hit the public consciousness, and people really want to see the rule of law prevail.
And Mr. Klein, all of this started in a very kind of quiet and private space. I imagine that you weren't thinking about this kind of an outcome.
Well, no. In fact, I'm hoping for a better outcome, but it seems like Congress has decided to go with the NSA.
Yeah.
It hasn't quite happened yet, but that's the way it's heading, and it's just terrible.
What made you decide to come forward with this story?
Well, I was brought up, in high school civics classes about the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution and civil liberties, and these are all protected. And then when I suddenly found myself wiring up a surveillance apparatus, which was obvious to me was completely violated the Fourth Amendment, I felt I had to do something about it.
And what was that moment like? Could you bring us back to that place when you realized what this device was? Kind of explain what the physical experience was.
Well, I could see when I got to that office that what they had done is wired the internet, main pipes of the internet were being copied directly to a room controlled by the National Security Agency. So they were copying the entire data stream, which means that they were violating the Fourth Amendment because no legal warrant would allow a copy of millions of messages without any specific mention of specific names. And at the time I couldn't do anything. When I retired, I kept these documents, and when the New York Times revealed it, I came forward, and we've been fighting ever since. It's been about 2 years now. And Congress basically has turned a deaf ear to me, and nobody in Congress has answered my letters. The only one who's been kindly enough to present my case in Congress was Senator Dodd, and he got run over by his own party leadership, who seems determined to do the work of the NSA and pass immunity for the phone companies.
Mr. Klein, you mentioned letters that you sent to the lawmakers. What did you ask them?
I asked them to listen to what I know about how they're violating the Fourth Amendment. I sent letters to all the key people, but on the whole, the Congress turned a deaf ear, and no committee of Congress in the last 2 years, in the House or Senate, Democrat or Republican, has ever invited me to testify. And I think that says it all about how Congress does not want to investigate this, how they want to cover it up. Both parties.
Hi, I'm Michael Bay, and I demand things to be awesome. Awesome, pussycat.
Awesome barbecue, awesome pool.
That's why I'm getting Verizon Files.
With the awesomest upload and download speeds. Yes, sir. Blows cable away.
This is Files. This is big.
So, Mr. Klein, you were talking about how you reached out to Congress people. You asked them to take a closer look at this issue. You went to the LA Times with this information.
The LA Times killed their story in February of 2006.
Right.
For no good reason. It came out later. They admitted they had talked to the NSA director and the DNI director, Negroponte, and I interpret that to mean they got scared of the government and killed the story. So then I went to the New York Times, and the New York Times published a story. I was interviewed by 60 Minutes in September 2006. They flew me to New York. Steve Croft interviewed me. It was a good interview. We waited 4 months, and they never aired it. then I interpret that as some political pressure was put on them, not theirs. So we went to the ABC Nightline, and they had an interview with me in January 2007.
And Cindy, the Electronic Frontier Foundation has been in this issue since the beginning, has been working with Mr. Klein with that information to kind of bring this attention to lawmakers and bring pressure on the administration.
We brought a lawsuit under the Constitution and under the laws of the United States. And that should have been where this was decided, in the courts. And the fact that we've even had to go to Congress to try to preserve the ability for the courts to do their job and interpret the law and apply the Constitution is very troubling.
So now we're in a situation where the government is debating protecting telecoms from ever being sued for violating civil liberties.
That's right. They're debating something that they're calling retroactive immunity for the phone companies. And you don't need immunity unless you've broken the law. And I think it's clear that they've broken the law because they won't let the courts decide whether they've broken the law or not, and that's a pretty clear indication. And then when you add to that the evidence that Mr. Klein has brought, which demonstrates the wholesale, untargeted surveillance of millions of ordinary Americans, that plainly violates the law and the Constitution. Mr. Klein's basic concern when he was hooking up this machine is exactly right. It's completely inconsistent with our constitutional values. So, I think it's a travesty that these huge corporations with all their money can run to Congress and get themselves out of the rule of law, and that Congress would even consider it. They should have been laughed out of the legislature with this proposal.
When you hear rhetoric about this case, you often hear this a defense for the telecoms actions and a defense of the NSA's actions, that this is all in the name of security and in protecting our liberties by making sure that the government has the data it needs to go after the bad guys. What do you say to that as someone who was physically tasked with hooking up the devices to listen in on potentially millions of conversations?
They don't have to get everybody's information to do that. And the original FISA law has plenty of room for them to get specific warrants as required by the Fourth Amendment, but instead they want to go in there and get everybody's information without a warrant, and there's no basis for that. It doesn't protect the American people. It just allows the government to be intrusive and collect everybody's information. For what? It's dangerous. The government has a whole history of abusing such powers. They spied on Martin Luther King and all the rest, and they spied on the anti-war movement back in the 60s and 70s, and that was the origins of the FISA law, to restrain this out-of-control executive. And now it's happening all over again.
Where should people go if they want to learn more about the case?
Well, EFF.org. We have several different pages, some about the case itself. Mr. Klein's evidence is available. People can look for themselves. Most Boing Boing readers probably know what a fiber optic splitter is and what it does, but if you want gory technical detail, it's pretty much all there. And including declarations from experts who support what Mr. Klein has said and kind of expand on it a little bit. And all of the case documents are up there. And then, of course, there's our Action Center where you can take action and let Congress know, let your Congress representatives know that this matters to you.